Hello again, this is Mr. Manchester, and we are looking at a review for the Unit 2 test in my Calculus AB class. Okay, so those are the questions that we're going to be talking about right there, so if you take a look at them, there's 11 of them and all the answers are on the bottom. So let's do some explaining maybe about what's going on here. Okay, so you need to recognize that this difference quotient is asking you to find the derivative of this function at this particular value. Okay, so this whole entire thing is asking us to find f prime of -1. Okay, so we're going to do the power rule and then plug in -1. So there's our derivative, 9x squared minus 4x, and then we plug in -1. Sorry, -1 goes there. 9 times -1 squared minus 4 times -1 is basically 9 plus 4, which is 13. Okay, number 2, we're given this as our function, and we want to approximate the value of 1.5. Okay, so we need to do a couple of things in order to do this. Number 1, we need to find out what the derivative is. Okay, so we need the derivative, we need the x point, we need the y point, and that's all. So we're going to take a second, and we're going to calculate all of this stuff for x equals pi over 2. Okay, so you can pause the video and come back and find the answer. Okay, so looking at what we have now, the derivative is -2 sine of x. Okay, 2 cosine x plus 1. Derivative is -2 sine of x. When we plug in pi over 2, we get a slope of -2. And when you plug in pi over 2 into our function, we get a -1. Okay, so now that we have that information, we can actually make the tangent line equation. So here is your tangent line equation. And now we're going to plug in 1.5 in for x and do a little bit of simplifying to get our answer, which is -2 plus pi, which is this answer if you were to make the positive thing come first. So positive, there we go. Okay, number 3, suppose this is our equation. Well, hopefully you notice that this is not actually in point slope form. So before we do anything, let's get this into point slope form by dividing both sides by -2. Right, the slope is not supposed to be in front of the y parentheses. It's supposed to be in front of the x parentheses. So now that we have it in the correct form, which statement can be made about g of x? Okay, so if we look at our slope is negative. Okay, oh wait, this is the normal line, never mind. The normal line, so the normal line has a negative slope, which means our function is going to have a positive slope. Right, so positive slope means that the graph is increasing. Okay, so make sure we read the equation, right? Read the problem. This one was tricky. This is the equation of the normal line, not the tangent line. Okay, so this -1/2 is the equation of the normal line's slope. So if we take the reciprocal, that's a +2. So a +2 slope means our graph is increasing. So be careful of what they give you and what they say, the words for your problem. Okay, number 4, this is the graph of f prime. Which one is not true? It has a relative extrema, which is a max or a min. Okay, the extremas are your maxes and mins. At -2, yes, it will happen at -2 because your slope changes from negative to positive. It will happen at 0 because your slope changes from positive to negative. In fact, this is going to be a minimum value. This is going to be a maximum value. And at +2, it's not going to have an extremum because you don't change, right? We stayed from negative on the left side to negative on the right side. So number 1 is not true, which means that's part of our answer. The graph is decreasing on this interval from -infinity to -2. Sure enough, the graph is below the x-axis. And from 0 to infinity, okay, there's a problem here because at +2, the graph is not decreasing. So this one is also incorrect. It should be from 0 to -2, or rather positive 2, union 2 to infinity, okay, to be correct. So that means that number 2 is also not true, because you should write your interval better. And then part 3, the slope is of the normal line is going to be negative. So since this is a slope graph, at -1, the slope of the tangent line is +4. Okay, so if the slope of the tangent line is +4, that means the normal, which is your perpendicular, will be negative. So in fact, yes, this one is true. So that means the answer is 1 and 2 only. Those are the ones that are not true. So once again, read your problem and see what they're asking you. Okay, number 5. Once again, you need to recognize this as being the derivative of this value. Okay, whatever function is here, we're being asked to find the derivative of cosine. Okay, d cosine dx, which is, of course, negative sine. So negative sine is over here. Okay, so be aware of this notation, right? This is the difference quotient notation. It is asking us to find the derivative of this part of your function, the cosine x. Derivative of cosine is negative sine. Okay, up here once again, right here is where our f is. This is asking us to find f prime, and this is your function. So what is the derivative of that function? Well, we're going to use the power rule and a trig function. So we have 6x squared minus the derivative of cosine is negative sine. So minus a minus is a plus. So 6x squared plus sine x is option A. Okay, so once again, know this notation. This is the tricky calculus way of asking you to find a derivative of whatever this function is. Okay, number 7, this is what is the equation of the normal line. So remember, we need 2 things. We need the x value, 3 things, the x value. We need the y value, so g of -8, and we need g prime at -8. Okay, so we're gonna plug -8 into here first. Okay, so pause and try that. I'll be right back. So here I'm back. So the y value when x is -8 is +8. Okay, when I substitute -8 into our places, right, we have 2 times -8, which is -16, and the cube root of -8, which is -2. Okay, the cube root of -8 is -2. So -16 over -2 is +8. So now we have to find the derivative of this function. Okay, so let's talk about how we find the derivative. And there's hard way and there's the easy way. So 2x over the third root of x. Okay, we could in fact use the quotient rule directly, okay, if you like dealing with fractional powers. Okay, I particularly don't. So I'm going to change this to 2 times x to the -1/3. Okay, I'm changing my radical into a fractional power, and it has to be a negative. So now I can add my powers, and that gives me 2x to the 2/3. So this is my simplified function of g. So now I can use the power rule to find g prime by doing 2/3 times 2, which is 4/3, x to the -1/3, when I subtract 1 from 2/3. Okay, so now I'm going to put that back in my denominator as the third root of x. So this is a nice way, in this case, of finding the derivative. So 4 over 3 times the third root of x. Okay, one more thing is to now plug in -8 to find the slope. So 4 over 3 times the cube root of -8 is once again 4 over 3 times -2, which is 4 over -6, which is -2/3. Okay, so our slope of our tangent line is -2/3. Okay, but if you think about the problem, that didn't ask us for the tangent line, it asked us for the normal line. So the normal line has a slope of 3/2. Okay, so let's put all this together, come back over here, and write an equation of the normal line, and it looks like it's gonna be this one. Okay, that was a lot. You need three things. You need the x value, you need the y value, and you need the slope of the normal line to this graph. Okay, number 8, which of these functions have their graphs decreasing when x is pi? So what we want to do is we need to find the derivative of each of these. Find the derivative of each of these and then plug in pi. Okay, so spend a second finding the derivative of each of these. Pause the video. I'm going to give you the answers in 2 seconds. And there they are. So we have -3 over 2 root x. We have 1 over 2 root x plus cosine x. And we have -4 over x cubed minus sine x. And you know what? When we plug in pi into each of these, we all get a negative. Every one of them is a negative. Okay, so it's actually going to be all 3 of them. All of their slopes are negative when you plug in pi, so each of the graph is decreasing on that interval. Okay, so number 9, this is a nice quotient rule to see if you know how to do this one correctly. So we have low times the derivative of the high minus the high function times the derivative of the low over the low function squared. Okay, and when you do all of that wonderful simplifying, so you should actually pause the video and go try all of that simplifying because you have to do it on your test, you would come out with part B as the final answer. Okay, part 10, once again, this defines the normal line. So what is the value of f prime? Well, this is not even the correct form of our equation. Okay, so we're going to put this in the correct form into point slope by first dividing everything by 2. So y plus 3 equals -5/2 2 minus x. Okay, so now hopefully you notice this is not the correct form either. It's not supposed to have a negative x in there. It's supposed to have a positive x. So this is -x plus 2. So I'm going to pull a negative out of both of these terms, okay, in order to fully write it as the correct form. So +5/2 x minus 2. So if I have a normal line with a 5/2 slope, that means my tangent line will have a -2/5 slope. Okay, what is the value of f prime of a, which is the slope? Okay, and lastly, number 11, what is the slope of the tangent line when x equals 1? Once again, we have to find our 3 things. We have to find g of 1, and we have to find g prime of 1. Okay, so do that, and I'll be right back to give you the answer. Just kidding, I came back early. We don't have to find out what g of 1 is. We just have to find g prime of 1. So we're going to use the product rule. Actually, we're going to, yes, product rule. So we're going to multiply this out first and then get one function, and then we will take the derivative. So here is my multiplied out polynomial function, and now I can take the derivative of that multiplied out polynomial function. Okay, -20x cubed minus 30x squared minus 10x. And then when I plug in -1, I get -60 as my answer. Sorry, +1, because it's basically -20 minus 30 minus 10. Okay, so hopefully most of that makes sense to you, and you will be doing well on your way to having a great grade on your Unit 2 test tomorrow.